Hey everyone, Andrew Bryant back here with tip number 2 that I'll go into. And as you can see, I'm experimenting without the headphones on, microphone, and as well just looking to add some music into the background to make my voice drown out a little bit more. But we still have the crummy, kiddish background for the time being, but we'll work on that. So, tip number 2. Let's get into the word tapering today. And tapering is something that runners do to gradually reduce their mileage going into race day. So there's all different types of tapering programs out there. There's hundreds. Some more common ones that I've seen is, 2 weeks out you should reduce your mileage by about 25%, and then 1 week out reduce it by about half. So what that could look like is 2 weeks out, you're usually running 50 miles, we'll now bring her down to about 40, and going out 1 week to the marathon, bring it down to 25. I'm just throwing those out as numbers, and again, my math isn't exact, but you get the idea. So with tapering, for me personally, I went from not knowing what it was for the first few marathons, and thus not doing anything, to overdoing it and feeling sluggish and not good for performance because of it. So what do? Where do we go? How do we implement tapering? This year, I basically threw out all my runs prior and said, let's just throw her out, let's do something totally different, and let's do what I think might work for me. And I always say what works for you is what works best. Just because it works for me doesn't mean that it's gospel at all. So take what I say, use it, don't, whatever. You need to find out what works for you. So what worked for me this year is I tried to basically keep the pedal to the metal all the time. So my tapering was basically non-existent for this year. My typical runs would be on Tuesday, I run 15 kilometers, which is a little under 10 miles. Same thing on Thursday, and then on Saturday, Sunday, I run a half marathon. That's my typical routine. Now, of course, I do change a little bit as I get closer to the runs. A few months out, I'll start adding in some longer distance runs, like 20 miles, 30 kilometers or thereabouts. I'll throw some of those in there as well. But that's my typical run would be that. I try and do that as much as I can. If I'm sick or I'm injured, obviously it's different. But that's what I would do for my usual routine for this past marathon. So what I tried to do this year is 2 weeks out, I didn't taper at all. I just kept my normal run going as per usual, kept my pace the same. 1 week out, I came off a little bit in terms of my overall mileage, but I didn't change a whole lot, and my pace stayed the same. I didn't try and relax really at all. Just to give you an idea, my week before the run, what I did is Saturday, Sunday, I didn't do both of those the week before, so I just did one of them. I just did one half marathon that day. I then ran my 15 kilometers on Tuesday, 15 kilometers on Thursday, and then what I did is my race day is on Sunday. What I did is I took Friday and Saturday off. I didn't run, which that gave me an extra day basically of rest. And what that ended up doing is I showed up at the finish, or at the start line, and at the finish line, I guess, for that matter. But I showed up at the start line at pretty much the same weight that I had been going at. So I didn't, even though I carb load big time, 2 to 3 days before the run, I didn't gain any weight. I kept the same weight, and that helps me to have a negative split. And a negative split means that you run the second half faster than the first half, which, if someone's not tapering, that tells me that they're probably doing what's right for their body, because they're still able to find some energy in the bank there come the last 5 miles or thereabouts to have a better second half than first half. And just to give you an idea as well, I had my best 2 miles were at the end. So that tells me that it worked for me, and I'm not bragging, it just that worked for me. Is I find what most runners do is novice runners, they overdo it. They end up overdoing it on it, and they carb load, and they end up feeling crappy. come the marathon, like they just don't feel their usual self. Even though they might be rested, they're probably, 2, 3, 5 pounds heavier than what they should be or what they typically are. And as you can remember from my first video blog, that weight is huge. Like if you're carrying extra weight, like your tapering better be worth it, because it's going to have to carry you around that course. So my advice would be, you do need to taper, yes, but don't overdo it. Like I'd rather you not taper than to overdo it. That's what my experience, my 17 marathons has told me, and proof's in the pudding. And for me this year it worked, and I'm going to keep trying it. So I would say yes, taper, but keep your pace going, relatively the same. Keep your mileage relatively the same. Ease off a bit, but just don't overdo it. Make sure you're rested. Yes, make sure you're not injured. Of course, if you're injured, you need a rest. If you're sick, you need a rest. But otherwise, keep the pedal to the metal. That's my advice. It worked for me, and I hope it'll work for you. So next time, we'll get into tip number 3 and get into the next topic, which I hope will help you get to the finish line faster.
Thank you.